Imagine waking up each morning with unshakable calm. No matter what someone says, no matter what life throws at you, you remain still. Not because the world is perfect, but because you are no longer ruled by it. In today's world, where people explode over traffic, tweets, and tone of voice, peace is not a given, it's a discipline. And yet the Stoics achieved it. Not by avoiding emotion, but by mastering it. This video is not just about anger management. It's about emotional freedom, about reclaiming control in a world that constantly tries to provoke you. You'll discover 10 powerful Stoic lessons that can help you never feel angry or frustrated with anyone, ever again. Not because people will change, but because you'll rise above them. If that's something you've been looking for, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because every week we explore the ancient wisdom that can bring modern peace. Let's begin your transformation from reactive to resilient, from controlled to in control. Let's dive into the wisdom of the Stoics. Lesson 1. Anger is a choice, not a reflex. You weren't born angry. Nobody handed you a manual at birth and said, here's how you should respond when someone disrespects you. You learn to get angry, which means you can unlearn it too. Let's begin then with a powerful truth. Anger is not automatic. It's chosen. It may feel instant, but it's not instinct. It's a practiced reaction, often repeated, rarely questioned. The Stoics believe that nothing external has the power to make us angry. Only our judgments about what happens, our interpretation, gives rise to rage. Think of it like this. Two people are cut off in traffic. One screams, honks, and curses for miles. The other shrugs and keeps driving. Same event, different reaction. Why? Because the second person has trained their mind. They've realized something crucial. Anger does not punish the person who triggered it. It punishes the one who carries it. In a world that celebrates being triggered, Stoicism dares to say, you are not a puppet. You have power. You can pause. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you allow anger to control you, you hand over your peace like currency to the first stranger who presses your buttons. But when you pause, just pause, you reclaim your power. Modern life gives us no shortage of reasons to get angry. A rude customer, a disrespectful coworker, a passive-aggressive text. But remember, these are just sparks. You decide whether they start a fire, and the cost of letting it burn, your clarity, your dignity, your health, your relationships. Science confirms what the Stoics already knew centuries ago. Chronic anger increases blood pressure, weakens the immune system, and leads to poor decisions, often ones we deeply regret. But here's the good news. Every moment is a new chance to respond differently. The next time you feel that familiar surge in your chest, stop, take one breath, ask yourself, is this worth sacrificing my peace? 99% of the time, it's not. Anger is often a temporary emotion that creates permanent damage. A single outburst can destroy a relationship that took years to build. A single insult can linger longer in someone's heart than you ever intended. Seneca, another great Stoic, called anger a temporary madness, and madness should never be your guide. You don't need to suppress anger, you need to understand it. Trace it to its root. Most of the time it's not about the event, but what it meant to your ego. When you realize that, you regain clarity, you regain control. So remember this, you are not your reaction. You are the one who chooses it, and in that choice is your power. Lesson 2. Negative emotions are born from failed expectations. Most of your frustration doesn't come from what happened. It comes from what you expected to happen and didn't. You expected them to respect you. You expected things to go smoothly. You expected life to follow your plan. And when it didn't, your peace crumbled. But here's the hard truth that the Stoics remind us of. The world does not exist to meet your expectations. That might sting at first, but it's also freeing. Because once you let go of the need for life to fit your ideal, you become untouchable. Epictetus said, It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Imagine this. You expect your friend to always be there when you call. One day, they don't pick up. You could get angry, feel betrayed, spiral into disappointment. But pause. What actually happened? They missed a call. That's it. The rest, the story of betrayal, the hurt, the rage, is something you created in your mind. The Stoics called this emotional trap the tyranny of expectation. It's the habit of assigning emotional value to how we believe life should go. But life doesn't follow our script. People won't act according to your standards. Traffic won't clear just because you're late. And not everyone will like you, no matter how kind you are. That's not pessimism. That's emotional realism. Seneca once said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think about that. The pain you carry from a comment, a rejection, or a delay often comes not from the event itself, but from the gap between what you expected and what actually occurred. So what do? We practice what the Stoics called amor fati, the love of fate. Not just acceptance, embracing reality. When you stop expecting life to be easy, it becomes easier. When you stop expecting people to act a certain way, you stop being controlled by their behavior. This doesn't mean you lower your standards. It means you stop tying your happiness to things outside your control. In the modern world, expectations are everywhere, driven by curated social media, instant gratification, and constant comparison. We expect perfection from others and from ourselves. And when that perfection doesn't arrive, we burn in silence. But what if you rewrote your internal code? What if, instead of expecting things to go your way, you trained yourself to stay grounded regardless? That's where true freedom begins, because the fewer expectations you carry, the lighter your emotional load. You move through life with grace instead of frustration, with acceptance instead of resentment. So the next time you feel anger rising, ask yourself, was I hurt, or was my expectations simply not met? That moment of clarity might just save your peace, and that peace is worth more than being right. Lesson 3. Anger is often just a wounded ego. Let's be honest, most of the time we're not angry because someone truly harmed us. We're angry because they bruised our ego. They didn't give us the attention we thought we deserved. They questioned our authority. They made us feel small, even if just for a second. But here's the Stoic insight. Your ego is not your identity. And protecting it at all costs is not strength. It's slavery. When we feel disrespected, we instinctively want to strike back. But is it justice we're after, or just a desperate attempt to feel important again? The ego hates to be challenged. It demands control. It wants to be right, to be admired, to win. But the more we cling to it, the more fragile we become. Epictetus reminds us it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about things. In other words, it's not the insult that causes the pain. It's the meaning we attach to it. Someone calls you incompetent. You can shrug it off or spiral for days. What decides the outcome? Your level of inner certainty. If your self-worth is solid, criticism is just noise. If your self-worth depends on the approval of others, every word becomes a threat. In the modern world, ego is constantly being poked. Social media is built to compare, compete, and provoke. Workplaces reward the loudest voices. Society teaches us to prove our worth. But Stoicism teaches something radically different. You don't need to prove anything, only to yourself. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor with immense power, wrote in his journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike the one who wronged you." That's not weakness, that's discipline. That's the kind of emotional maturity we need more of today. When someone disrespects you, you don't need to explode. You don't need to defend your honor with fire and fury. Why? Because your dignity is not up for negotiation. Anger may feel powerful in the moment, but it reveals how easily others can control you. Anyone who can provoke you owns you. So, how do we let go? We start by separating the event from the ego's narrative. We ask, what actually happened and what story am I telling myself about it? Often, we find that the pain isn't real. It's just our pride, licking its wounds. Here's a powerful practice. When you feel the heat rising, don't act, observe, reflect, recenter. You'll realize that nothing essential about you is ever threatened. Your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to see it. Let your peace be louder than your ego, because in a world full of noise, silence is a sign of mastery. Remember, you don't need to win the argument. You need to win yourself. And that's a victory no one can take away. Lesson 4. Forgiveness is freedom, not surrender. What if I told you that your anger isn't hurting them? It's hurting you. That while you're replaying the betrayal, the insult, or the injustice over and over in your mind, the person who caused it has already moved on. Meanwhile, you remain stuck, not in the past event, but in the emotions you refuse to release. This is where the Stoics deliver a lesson that is both uncomfortable and liberating. Forgiveness is not for them, it's for you. Seneca once wrote, "He who has injured thee was either stronger or weaker than thee. If weaker, spare him. If stronger, spare thyself." In other words, letting go of anger is not weakness, it's wisdom. We often hold on to resentment as a way to maintain power. If I forgive, it means they win, we tell ourselves. But think about this. Who is really in control when your peace depends on their punishment? Forgiveness is not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's not about excusing bad behavior. It's about releasing the emotional grip someone else has over your inner state. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with every insult, betrayal, or offense you've ever experienced. Now imagine choosing, today, to set it down. How much lighter would your mind feel? In the modern world, we're encouraged to cut off toxic people, clap back, and never forget. But often these strategies leave us more bitter, not better. They keep us in a cycle of reaction instead of healing. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is not passive. It's a conscious decision to protect your inner harmony. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is not to become like the one who wronged you." That's not just philosophical, it's psychological. Holding on to anger activates your stress response. It affects your sleep, your focus, your relationships. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a remembered one. So every time you relive the offense, you relive the pain. But when you forgive, you stop handing out free rent in your mind to people who don't deserve it. Here's a powerful perspective shift. You don't have to forget what happened, but you can choose not to be defined by it. The moment you forgive is the moment you take your power back. You stop being the victim in your story and become the author of it. So how do you do it? Start by recognizing that forgiveness isn't a feeling. It's a decision, often one you have to make more than once. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't even mean contact. It means you're choosing your peace over your pride, your growth over your grudge, your future over your past. Because at the end of the day, the cost of holding on is far greater than the cost of letting go. Lesson 5. Strength is in the pause. Practice non-reaction. In a world that rewards quick replies, hot takes, and instant emotions, silence is a superpower. We've been conditioned to believe that reacting fast means we're strong, smart, or in control. But the Stoics saw things differently. They believed that true power lies not in how you strike back, but in how you hold back. Epictetus said it best: if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Let that sink in. You are not obligated to respond to every insult. You're not required to defend your ego at every turn. And not everything that triggers you deserves your energy. Non-reaction isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's a sign that you know what truly matters and what doesn't. Picture this: someone cuts you off in traffic. A coworker makes a passive-aggressive comment. A stranger leaves a nasty comment online. Your first impulse: snap, lash out, prove them wrong. But here's the Stoic move: pause, breathe, step back. That 1-second pause creates space, and in that space you regain control over something most people lose daily: your state of mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you." Modern psychology agrees. Reacting impulsively activates the amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system. But taking a pause activates your prefrontal cortex, your logic and reasoning center. In other words, pausing doesn't just make you wise, it actually makes you smarter. So why don't more people do it? Because reacting feels good in the moment. It gives you the illusion of control. But often it only escalates the problem, damages relationships, and leaves you with regret. Think about the last time you overreacted. Did it solve the issue, or did it just add fuel to the fire? The Stoics teach us to respond with intention, not emotion. Non-reaction is not the same as indifference. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about staying grounded enough to choose your response, instead of being hijacked by the situation. In the digital age, this is even more essential. One text message, one comment, one post, and your peace can be shattered. Unless you train yourself differently. Here's a powerful practice. When something irritates you, ask, is this worth the energy I'm about to give it? Will this matter in an hour, a day, a year? If the answer is no, let it pass. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to protect your peace. As the Stoics believed, the world will always try to provoke you, but you get to decide what's worthy of a reaction and what's not. Your power is not in how loud you get, it's in how calm you remain. Lesson 6. Insecurity makes you easy to offend. Know yourself. Let's get to the root. Why do some people seem constantly offended, reactive, or defensive, while others remain unshaken in the face of criticism? The answer is simple but powerful. Insecurity. When you don't truly know who you are, when your self-worth is shaky, uncertain, dependent on validation, then every comment, every look, every moment of silence can feel like a personal attack. But the Stoics taught us that most of our anger doesn't come from what was said. It comes from what it touches inside us. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In today's world, that sounds radical. We live in an era of image, likes, and social reputation. We want to be seen as smart, strong, successful, all the time. But the paradox is this: the more you need others to approve of you, the more power you give them to disturb your peace. Your triggers reveal your wounds, and if you're constantly getting angry at others, it may be time to ask, where am I still unsure of myself? Because when you're solid in your values, when you've done the inner work of defining who you are, you don't get shaken by noise. A negative comment becomes just that, a comment, not a dagger to your identity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know who you are." Let that remind you, you don't owe anyone a performance, you owe yourself honesty. So how do we start building that unshakable core? By practicing radical self-awareness, by observing our reactions and tracing them back to their roots. Was it really the tone of their voice that upset you, or was it the fact that it echoed your own inner doubts? The Stoics were not emotionless robots. They simply learned how to separate emotion from identity. They knew that you can feel hurt without becoming the hurt. You can feel anger without acting on it. You can be criticized and still remain calm. That's the strength of someone who knows themselves deeply. In modern life, we often confuse busyness with self-knowledge. We keep moving, achieving, consuming, but rarely reflecting. But peace doesn't come from doing more. It comes from understanding more. Next time someone offends you, try this simple practice. Pause and ask, is what they said true? Does it reflect who I really am? If yes, grow from it. If no, let it go. Don't let their words become your identity. You are not your insecurities. You are not your worst thoughts. You are not the opinion of strangers on the internet. You are who you choose to become. And that begins with clarity. Lesson 7. Without purpose, every obstacle feels like a crisis. Ever wonder why small things seem to ruin your entire day? A delayed train, A slow reply, someone cuts in line, and suddenly you're boiling inside. It's not the event that overwhelms you, it's the lack of something bigger to focus on. The Stoics knew this well. When you don't have a clear purpose, every inconvenience becomes a major disruption. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor burdened with the weight of an empire, still wrote daily in his journal, reminding himself of his higher mission. He knew, when your mind is fixed on something meaningful, you don't waste your energy on meaningless friction. Modern life, though, is full of noise. We're flooded with information, distractions, and artificial urgencies. It's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. And when you drift aimlessly, every bump in the road feels like a threat, not a detour. But here's the truth. A mind without direction will always default to reaction. When you lack purpose, anger becomes your default emotion. You become reactive, hypersensitive, constantly frustrated, not because life is harder, but because you have no anchor. The Stoics teach us that living with telos, a sense of aim, helps us respond to life instead of reacting to it. So what's your aim? Not your job title, not your goals for the year, but your why. Why do you wake up? Why do you keep going when things get hard? If you don't know, you're vulnerable. Purpose acts like emotional armor. When you're on a mission, whether it's to grow, serve, create, or lead, petty annoyances lose their grip on you. You stop sweating the small stuff because you're focused on something far greater. Here's an analogy. Imagine a soldier marching to defend something sacred. Do you think he'll be distracted by the weather or the mud on his boots? No, because his eyes are on the mission. You can be that soldier in your own life, marching not with aggression, but with intention. Next time you feel yourself getting irritated, ask, am I focused on what truly matters right now? Or have I allowed myself to be hijacked by something small? Clarity clears clutter, and with clarity comes calm. Now, finding your purpose doesn't have to be dramatic or mystical. It simply means identifying what kind of person you want to become, and aligning your daily choices with that vision. Epictetus once said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. When you know who you want to be, you don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. Your path becomes your priority, and distractions, even emotional ones like anger, fade into the background. So, don't just manage your anger, transcend it. Let your purpose speak louder than your frustration. Lesson 8. You can train your brain to stay calm. Thanks to neuroplasticity. Have you ever said, that's just how I am, I have a short fuse? The Stoics would challenge that idea completely. And now, neuroscience backs them up. You are not fixed. You are not doomed to react with anger forever. Your brain can change, and you can rewire your emotional responses. This is the gift of neuroplasticity. Your brain's ability to adapt, reprogram, and grow based on repeated behaviors. Epictetus taught, we become what we repeatedly do. Modern science echoes this timeless Stoic wisdom. Every time you choose to pause instead of explode, every time you respond with patience instead of rage, you're not just being good, you're literally reshaping your brain. Let that sink in. With consistent practice, calm can become your new default. In a chaotic world, that's a superpower. Most people believe their emotions are hardwired, but emotions are habits. And like any habit, they can be broken and replaced. Imagine this. You used to flare up whenever someone criticized you, but now you pause, breathe, and smile. Not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you've trained yourself to respond from strength instead of insecurity. That's not magic. That's mental muscle memory. Think of your brain like a forest trail. The more you walk a certain path, the clearer it becomes. If you keep choosing the path of anger, it becomes automatic. But if you stop and start carving a new trail of peace, eventually that becomes your instinct. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. So what are you thinking about constantly? Are you feeding your brain with complaints, offenses, and insults? Or are you feeding it discipline, reflection, and presence? Because what you repeat, you become. Neuroplasticity doesn't require perfection, it requires intention. It rewards repetition, not intensity. So start small. Pause for 3 seconds before responding to a trigger. Write down one thing you're grateful for every morning. Reflect on your reactions each evening, not with judgment, but curiosity. These aren't just emotional exercises. They're physical rewiring mechanisms. Over time, you'll notice something remarkable. Situations that used to shake you now feel neutral. Words that once provoked you now roll off your shoulders. You no longer need to fight everything, because nothing inside you feels threatened. That's not suppression. That's transformation. The Stoics didn't aim to be perfect. They aimed to be better today than yesterday. More stable, more grounded, more intentional. And thanks to what we now know about the brain, you don't have to be a philosopher to apply this. You just need to practice. So the next time you feel the heat of anger rising, remind yourself, this isn't who I am, this is who I've been. And today I choose a new path. And step by step, your brain and your life will follow. Lesson 9, gratitude destroys anger. Shift your focus. When you're angry, your mind locks on to what's missing, what went wrong, what they said, what should have happened but didn't. It's like staring at a wound and picking at it, hoping it will heal faster. It won't. That's where gratitude steps in, not as a feel-good cliché, but as a radical act of self-mastery. The Stoics believe that much of our emotional suffering comes not from reality, but from where we choose to place our attention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Gratitude doesn't erase pain. It reframes it. It reminds you that even when things go wrong, you still have something to protect, something to be proud of, something to love. In the modern world, we're wired to focus on lack. Social media shows us what we're missing. News media shows us what's broken. Advertising tells us we're never enough. No wonder we walk around irritated, restless, angry. But here's the truth. You can't feel angry and grateful at the same time. The two emotions operate on different mental frequencies, and you get to choose the station. So how do we apply this in daily life? Start simple. Next time you feel anger rising, whether it's toward a person, situation, or even yourself, pause and ask, what am I still lucky to have in this moment? It could be something as small as breath in your lungs, the ability to walk, to read, to learn, a friend you can call, a lesson you've gained. Seneca once said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." Gratitude pulls you out of the future where anxiety lives, and out of the past where resentment lives, and plants you firmly in the now. It grounds you, it humbles you, and most importantly, it breaks the chain of emotional reactivity. Here's a powerful practice you can start today. Every time something frustrates you, force yourself, yes, force, to name one thing you're grateful for. Say it out loud, write it down, make it real. At first it'll feel fake, but over time, your brain will rewire itself to look for what's right before it reacts to what's wrong. That's neuroplasticity in action. That's Stoicism in practice. Gratitude isn't passive, it's one of the most active and courageous choices you can make. Because in a world that profits off your dissatisfaction, choosing to be thankful is an act of rebellion. So when life tests your patience, when people fail you, when anger knocks on your door, pause and count your blessings like shields. Because anger shrinks when appreciation expands, and in that moment, you don't just feel peace, you become it. Lesson 10, set boundaries, not to keep others out, but to keep your peace in. Here's a truth that many people struggle with. You are not overwhelmed because people ask too much of you. You are overwhelmed because you haven't clearly said, this is enough. Anger, resentment, frustration, they don't always come from big betrayals. More often they come from a lack of boundaries. You keep saying yes when you want to say no. You let interruptions hijack your attention. You tolerate disrespect because you don't want to cause conflict. But in trying to avoid discomfort on the outside, you create chaos on the inside. The Stoics were clear: you cannot control others, but you can control what you allow. Epictetus said, if you want to be more tranquil, engage in fewer things. That doesn't mean hiding from life. It means knowing your limits. It means recognizing that peace isn't passive, it's protected. In today's hyper-connected world, we're taught that being available 24/7 is a sign of value. We equate being needed with being loved. But constantly bending to other people's urgencies slowly breaks your spine. If you don't set boundaries, don't be surprised when people walk all over your time, your energy, and your emotional space. And here's the Stoic twist. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others. It's about honoring yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" That's the question of a master, someone who has chosen intentional living over emotional reactivity. So how do you do this in real life? Start small. If someone interrupts your focus, say, "I'm working right now, I'll get back to you shortly." If someone disrespects your space, calmly respond, "I'm not comfortable with that." If your schedule is overloaded, say, "I can't take this on at the moment." You don't owe anyone an elaborate explanation. You owe yourself consistency. And no, you're not being rude. You're being clear. Clarity is kindness, both to others and to yourself. The real power of boundaries isn't just in the words you speak. It's in the energy you radiate when you know where you begin and where others end. Boundaries don't push people away. They allow healthy connection, based on respect, not obligation. They prevent the slow buildup of silent resentment, which is often what turns into explosive anger later. So remember this: every time you say yes to something that violates your peace, you're saying no to yourself. The Stoic life is not just about enduring hardship. It's about choosing your hardship wisely. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is to draw a line. But that line might be the doorway to the peace you've been searching for. So protect your time. Protect your energy. Protect your mind. Not to isolate yourself, but to remain centered in a world that constantly tries to pull you off course. Because once you master your boundaries, you don't have to master your anger nearly as often. You've just explored 10 timeless Stoic lessons, not as ancient philosophy, but as modern tools to reclaim your peace in a chaotic world. Maybe for years you thought that anger was just part of who you are, that you had no choice but to explode when provoked, defend when disrespected, and lash out when life didn't go your way. But now you know better. You're not your impulses, you're not your triggers, you're not your past reactions. You are something far greater. You are the observer, the decision maker, the calm within the storm. The world will not stop challenging you. There will always be rude people, unfair moments, and unexpected setbacks. But through Stoic wisdom, you've gained the tools to rise above, to pause, to reflect, to respond with clarity instead of chaos. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Until one day, what once would have shattered your peace now barely stirs your spirit. That's not just emotional control, that's emotional freedom. So take this with you. Let go of what you can't control. Master what you can, your thoughts, your perspective, your reactions. And remember, true strength is quiet, not loud. It's measured, not impulsive. If this video gave you even one insight to shift your mindset, please leave a comment and let us know what stood out to you most. And if you found it helpful, share this video with someone who might need more peace in their life. We're building a community of modern Stoics, not to escape the world, but to move through it with grace, wisdom, and unwavering strength. Thank you for being here. And never forget, you can't always control what happens, but you can always control how you show up. Choose calm, choose clarity, choose the Stoic way.